people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Former IBF welterweight champion Ivana Habazin of Croatia posted this to her Twitter account. It reads, to date, the IBF, the WBC, and now the WBA call for mandatory defense between me and Jessica McCaskill. Work hard in silence, let success be your noise. Eddie Hearn, sorry to ruin your plans. I took a trip over to the IBF's website. It appears that there must have been something to what Ivana Habazin said a few days ago. The IBF title is registered as being vacant, which would then have to mean that Jessica McCaskill is no longer the welterweight division's undisputed champion, as there is some dispute. Both she and Ivana Habazin are their current number 1 and number 2 ranked fighters. Could a fight between them happen? It might. Eddie Hearn responded to Ivana Habazin's post saying, no probs. It's a good fight. A sensible one. A sensical one. If Ivana Habazin is in fact Jessica McCaskill's mandatory challenger by way of the WBC and the WBA, and if a fight between them has also been ordered by way of the IBF for the newly vacated IBF title, it's only right they get it done. It's the ideal rebound fight for Jessica and the ideal opportunity for Ivana. The fight makes sense for the both of them, though if by some chance the fight doesn't get made and the fight doesn't happen for whatever reason, up-and-comer Sandy Ryan, she's thrown her name into the hat saying, if Jess doesn't defend against you, I'll gladly come to 147 and fight you, to which Ivana Habazin responded, respect. I'm pretty sure this fight will happen in the future. Things are shaking, rattling, and rolling anywhere in between 140 and 147 pounds. There was a desire expressed from Chantel Cameron, who last fought Jessica McCaskill down there at 140, to run it back, except this time it would be at 147 for the remaining titles that Jessica holds there. And I said it then, it was too one-sided, and if I'm being honest, it's the worst I've ever seen her. It's the worst performance I've ever seen from Jessica McCaskill. There's no desire to see a second fight. Not straight away. Here and now, McCaskill versus Habazin makes a little more sense to help get Jessica back in the winner's bracket. And if nothing else, Ivana appears to be her mandatory challenger, so that alone sets a precedence to do the fight. It's not a big fight. It's not a co-main event. It's not a main event. It's an undercard fight at best. That's what it is. But there's reason enough to do it because Jessica needs to get back in the winner's bracket, and I'm sure she wants to hang on to what belts she still has as a welterweight champion, as they give her leverage to get bigger purses from bigger fights with better fighters. Things are looking promising, and I expect to see McCaskill versus Habazin in the coming year. As far as Chantel and running it back with Jessica, I think that's contingent upon what happens in a McCaskill versus Habazin fight. Chantel herself is currently under orders to face former WBO super lightweight champion Christina Lenardatu, and I like that fight a lot more than I like a McCaskill rematch, if I'm being honest. Cameron versus Lenardatu is the fight for me. Yeah, I want that to be Chantel's next fight. That makes a lot more sense to me. What about Sandy? Sandy Ryan, who sports a professional record of 5 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 2 knockouts, that 1 loss having come at the hands of former super lightweight champion Erica Farias. We all know Sandy has since avenged that loss in their rematch. Sandy has the good fortune of campaigning in a densely populated division where there are multitude of options to choose from. Former champions and up-and-comers like herself. I mean, Sandy Ryan versus Jessica Kamara. You remember Jessica Kamara? She beat Heather Hardy and she fought Kaylee Reese last year. Gave her a really good fight. Sandy Ryan versus Jessica Kamara makes a lot of sense. Sandy Ryan versus Belgium's own Ocean Diriu. Sandy versus former IBF champion Victoria Noelia Bustos of Argentina. Sandy versus Ana E. Esther Sanchez, yet another former champion. Miranda Reyes, Victoire Pitou, Priska Vicot. Sandy Ryan has the good fortune of campaigning in a densely populated division with a lot of up-and-comers and a lot of former champions there to choose from. So even if she can't land an Ivana Habazin fight, it's all right. There's that many more fish in the sea. She'll be fine. She'll be all right. And if I'm being honest, while I have a very high opinion of Sandy Ryan, and I think she has a high ceiling, I don't really think she's ready for the big dogs. I don't think she's quite ready for the sharks. Anywhere in between 140 and 147 pounds. I feel that the first Erica Farias fight is evidence of that. Maybe Sandy thought that she could just walk through her and overpower her, but she quickly found out in that fight. Not everybody's gonna lay down off the first hard punch that lands. I feel like in spite of Sandy's experiences so far as a professional and her amateur background, she still needs more seasoning. Those eggs still need more bacon before she's ready to not only challenge for a title, but successfully defend one. Maybe Sandy can take on Ivana after Ivana settles up with Jessica. Provided that Jessica beats her, I see no reason that Sandy shouldn't be able to fight Ivana anyway. Ivana's been around a long time. She's a former champion. She's been in there with a lot of girls. In any event, we'll see how it shakes out in the coming year.
I did my thing. I did my Rocky Balboa shit when I put the faces on the characters, man. I did my thing, but at the end of the day, like, I'm not just gonna sit there and like rely on chasing down Canelo when Canelo don't want to do it. He'd rather fight John Ryder.
You got to admit though, champ. I mean, John Ryder off the Danny and now the part. I mean, he ain't the worst of options. You know
For
what I'm saying?
tune-up,
Yeah,
right?
of course he is. Of course he's the worst of options when you got Jamal Charlo, when you got Demetrius Andrade, when you got the rematch with Bivol, when you got other guys that's been.
Demetrius must have been deliberately obtuse when he made these statements because Canelo Alvarez is coming off of hand surgery and John Ryder, at least for him, is little more than a tune-up fight.
Champion
He's coming off
in the
surgery.
same weight class, in the same weight classes as him.
Neither Demetrius Andrade or Jamal Charlo campaign at the same weight as Canelo Alvarez, the super middleweight division's undisputed champion. Jamal still campaigns as a middleweight, and Demetrius has yet to make his super middleweight debut. So what is this man talking about?
I mean,
But ain't he coming off surgery?
yeah, he coming off the surgery. It's a tune-up fight.
Oh, okay, so that's cool.
I want you to pay attention to something. Canelo Alvarez fought 2 times this year, 2 times. He went up there to light heavyweight, where Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo dare not venture. He went up there to light heavyweight, took on an unbeaten champion in his prime in Dimitri Bivol, lost that fight, and rebounded off that loss this same calendar year opposite the ring, Gennady Golovkin. He didn't spend the whole year sitting on his ass like Demetrius did. At some point in the year, Canelo Alvarez sustained a hand injury, but he didn't allow that hand injury to bench him for the entirety of the year, the same way that Demetrius Andrade has more or less benched himself for the entirety of this year. He didn't fight. He was ordered to fight Yanni Beck, but he didn't have any time for him. He said he was going to move up in weight and take on Zach Parker, but he reportedly sustained an injury. I don't believe that shit. He circles back for that Zach Parker fight, except when he circled back, the fight was worth a lot less than it was when he first went into it.
And I know why you didn't just fight Johnny Beck. Why, like, how is Zach Parker any more popular than Johnny Beck? They the same.
Because I am not fighting at 160.
Oh, so you just can't make weight no more. You was
Yeah,
ready
but
to
I'm
move
going
up.
up to like 160's over for me.
So the whole talk after the first cancellation with the Parker fight of you coming back down to 60, that was all cap.
Not on your part,
Who
but just
said
in
that
general.
though? Who said that I was coming back to 160? Me?
No,
Yeah, because you hadn't officially vacated your belt. Remember,
Of
you had
course, it's business.
I love hearing Demetrius Andrade relegate his decisions to being business decisions when if they are business decisions, they are poor business decisions. Understand that he likely would have made more boxing Yanni Beck this year as a defending champion than sitting out the entirety of this year and making nothing to box no one. I want you to understand that he likely would have made more boxing Yanni Beck as a defending champion than what he's about to make boxing Desmond Nicholson on an undercard.
With Yanni Beck, he would have headlined that show. With Desmond Nicholson, he's somewhere on the undercard.
It's business at the end of the day, but I never said I was going back down. It's business at the end of the day. Of course, I'm going to try to do what everybody else does, hold on until this situation. If Charlo wants to tangle at 160, I'm like, okay, maybe I suffer to do that.
So what you're basically saying is you're done with middleweight unless the right opportunity opens up, which in effect means that you can make middleweight, or you could have. You just didn't want to for Yanni Beck.
Which wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world if you actually fought Zach Parker and beat Zach Parker and became WBO interim champion, but you didn't. You didn't do that.
You didn't do anything. You reportedly suffered an injury and sat out all of this year. And bear in mind, I don't actually think Demetrius was injured, but let's just go with it for argument's sake.
Maybe if you would have fought Yanni Beck straight away, you wouldn't have got injured, and you would have ended up making more money as a defending champion than you're about to make opposite Desmond Nicholson.
On a fucking undercard.
But if not, there's no point for me to be there anymore, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, that's just business moves right there.
For sure. I mean, again, it's some of those things need clarification because of the fact that it went down that way. It left people believing you possibly still want to fight at 60.
Yeah, but who don't do that?
The biggest problem with Demetrius Andrade's rationale is that the business decisions that he made this past calendar year don't appear to make any business sense. It doesn't make sense to say that you got no time for an unbeaten up-and-comer in Yanni Beck. You got no time for him, but you have time for a journeyman the following year.
How does that work? With Yanni Beck, you would have been a defending champion headlining a show. What you're about to do is buried in an undercard.
Stranger is that Demetrius Andrade stood a good enough chance that he probably could have beat Yanni Beck. Hindsight being 20/20, and Yanni Beck looking the way he's been looking, the way he just looked opposite the ring, Denzel Bentley, Demetrius probably could have beat this guy.
Probably.
He himself says that this guy being Yanni Beck, can't carry my bags to the gym.
Maybe not, but you don't get a fight purse for postulating.
And you just sat out this entire calendar year. That's a year you won't get back. Boxers having such a short window of opportunity to really make money in the sport.
Time is a luxury you don't have. You're in your mid-30s. You're actually older than Canelo Alvarez and far less accomplished.
He claimed that John Ryder was the absolute worst choice for Canelo Alvarez's next fight, but look at the choice that he just made.
Desmond Nicholson is not ranked top 10 in the division. John Ryder is.
Desmond Nicholson did not achieve WBO interim status in his last fight. John Ryder did. The same WBO interim status that not that long ago Demetrius Andrade was shooting for. So how is John Ryder the worst choice?
Desmond Nicholson ranked higher than John Ryder?
Does he have wins over guys like Danny Jacobs and unbeaten Zach Parker?
Oh, I get it. You're saying that he shouldn't have chose John Ryder. He should have chose you.
Is that what you would have did?
No, it isn't. Because look at who you're fighting. You're supposed to be coming off of some kind of injury yourself, aren't you?
And look at who you're fighting. Look at who you're about to share the ring with. A guy that Edgar Berlanga beat a couple of fights ago. So clearly,
your logic, if you even want to call it that, your logic is flawed, and this is a double standard.
Except the difference between you and Canelo Alvarez is Canelo Alvarez's body of work is already better than yours, even though you're older.
He's already more active than you are. He was more active. He was, in fact, more active this past calendar year than you were.
And where you want to trash him and the guy who he's about to fight, the guy he's about to fight, if it ends up being John Ryder, is in fact a higher-ranked contender than the guy you're about to fight. Canelo's fighting in a tune-up fight. When he tunes up, it's against a top 10 guy. When you tune up,
it's against a Desmond Nicholson.
Demetrius Andrade is in no position to talk. He's delusional.
And this business decision that he's made.
Well, you were too good for Yanni Beck, and you were supposed to be fighting Zach Parker, but you got hurt. Can't cry over spilt milk. Now you're on the PBC side of things, and you're about to fight on an undercard. You're not headlining anymore. And the end game is supposed to be big fights with PBC fighters. In that way, we won't know that this investment pays off unless Al Heyman and the PBC deliver you those fights.
Deliver you those names, but how long is it going to take them to do that?
Because until they do, we don't know that this business decision
Hasn't exactly paid off for you. Not yet, anyway.
not a productive year for the former two-division champion. Demetrius recently detailed what exactly went on in the Zach Parker fight, and that fight's collapse, saying, I'm not going to go fight in Zach Parker's country for 150 grand.
Zach Parker, who John Ryder overwhelmed.
John Ryder, who Demetrius Andrade belittled and berated. I don't imagine that John got an arm and a leg for that fight.
But he did it anyway.
You've got people that are smart, Andrade told BoxingScene.com. You've got people that just, don't really know what they're talking about. You've got fight fans that's just oblivious to things. I'm not going to go fight over in this guy's country for $150,000. When we were supposed to fight the first time, I was supposed to make 1 point something million. Due to the injury, I just needed some more time. Just like if it would have happened to somebody else. That's just not happening.
And what do you stand to make boxing Desmond Nicholson?
Demetrius Andrade originally was due to make $1.1 million for facing Parker. As the WBO's middleweight champion who moved up in weight for their mandated match, he was entitled to 65% of Queensberry Promotions' winning bid of $1.8 million.
You know, he reportedly got injured, came off the injury, circled back for the Parker fight, and the pot the second time out was a lot smaller than it was the first time.
It wasn't a $1.8 million pot anymore.
It was a $300,000 pot the second time out, so you can see how Demetrius Andrade stood to make much less than he did the first time out.
And that's if you believe he was actually injured. I don't. I'd sooner believe that this is another instance of Demetrius shooting himself in the foot than sheer circumstance. It was crazy, Andrade said, and then on top of that, people think because it was for the interim WBO title, that was supposed to guarantee me a Canelo fight. No, it doesn't. It does not guarantee me a Canelo fight. Only Canelo will make that clear, yes or no, and his favorite word is horrible.
John Ryder ended up standing in Demetrius's place, and coincidentally, John Ryder is on the cusp of taking on Canelo Alvarez.
But you want to trash John Ryder for taking on the guy that you didn't take on. And you know that John Ryder, he's not a Queensberry Promotions fighter. He's a matchroom fighter.
The difference between him and you is he was willing to gamble. You're not.
Because you think you're special.
You're entitled.
So maybe beating Zach Parker didn't exactly guarantee Demetrius Andrade Canelo Alvarez fight. Maybe it didn't, but at minimum, it put him in position to pick up the newly vacated WBO title should the title be vacated.
As it stands, Demetrius didn't beat Zach Parker. John Ryder beat Zach Parker.
So John Ryder's in position to either take on Canelo Alvarez at some point this year or potentially become this division's WBO champion should the title go vacant. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
I don't care what you think Demetrius would have done to Zach Parker or what you think he might do to John Ryder.
He don't get points for your postulating.
Presuppositions do absolutely nothing for Demetrius's current situation.
Career of Demetrius Andrade for the longest time has been little more than a theory.
When in reality, he's fighting a guy who's ranked behind John Ryder.
That's reality, and you're going to criticize Canelo Alvarez, who's coming off a surgery, for fighting him. Look at the guy you're fighting.
It's entitlement, if it's anything.
This guy thinks he's special.